Debbie, thank you so much for the interview.
Oh, I am so excited to talk to you. I am such an admirer of your work. What you did with Misbehavior, I thought was brilliant, the way you cut that. And Stan and Ollie, that truly is one of my favorite films. It's so beautiful.
Debbie, thank you so much, because you know what? I love Stan and Ollie and Misbehavior, and so many people still haven't seen them, so thank you so much, because I'm really proud of those films as well.
You know, Misbehavior gave me so many laughs, and the period was perfect, and the way you cut it, you kept the energy going. With Stan and Ollie, you let it be more personal, more intimate, and you held frames so that we could really appreciate the talent of the boys playing Stan and Ollie to the point that they were so good, I forgot we were not seeing Oliver Hardy and Stan Laurel.
Yeah, and particularly that scene, I think, when Stan comes to say to Laurel, when Hardy says, Stan, I'm not going to continue in the bedroom, that scene, I think their performances were exquisite, and they actually invited a more slower, more intimate type of editing rather than being too fast or visceral.
Oh, I mean...
So happy, Debbie. Thank you so much for watching them, and particularly Misbehavior, because poor Misbehavior sort of got lost with the pandemic.
I know!
It opened the weekend, the cinemas shut in both UK and America.
But that was one of my saving films to keep me laughing when we went on, was Misbehavior. I think I watched it 3 times already.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But now we have
Belfast to have you weeping and laughing in equal measure.
This, without a doubt, for my money, this is the best picture of the year.
Oh wow!
This is breathtaking. What Kenneth has done, and then what you have done. This could have been cut so many different ways and turned into something more maudlin. Whereas you make this with your cut, with your edit, with your pacing. You keep it moving. It's like, oh, before I knew it, the film was over. And I'm like, okay, I need chapter 2. What happens to Buddy now? But it is so intimate. It is so personal. And the way you hold the edits, we get to see those faces. Little Jude Hill, he just lights up the screen. And then you get a life lived in the deep creases and lines on Judi Dench's face. And you really get the emotional texture of life in this film. And then you're melding black and white with color. And we're at the cinema, and I did not expect to see colorful and fur-laden Raquel Welch on the screen.
I know.
That was a huge surprise. And the same thing with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And then the way the camera moved, and you just celebrated that with your cut, and you went in a little, tightened up.
Debbie,
yes.
I adore you. Right. Because you're getting everything. And even when we were cutting those cinema scenes, we were really finding the best first shot. And that sort of volcanic eruption seemed like a really good way to introduce some colour to the film.
Yeah.
Rather than any of the other shots that we could have started with, obviously, with the...
Yeah, and it fits so perfectly with Buddy and his whole larger than life. Everything is larger than life to Buddy, even though it's contained in this tiny little world, in this tiny little neighborhood in Belfast. And you keep us in those moments. You keep us in that POV. And it is celebratory. It warms the heart. It's masterful. How did
I think point of view. I think actually you've actually put your finger on it. For me as an editor, the thing that I actually really do celebrate is the humanity in anything I edit. I'm always looking at for the humanity and the empathy with the characters. The point of view is it's really important to allow the audience in so that they can actually understand and feel something for these characters. So that was for Belfast. Obviously, Kenneth wrote, he's a master storyteller.
Yes.
He wrote the most exquisite script, a beautiful cast. Belfast, everyone been very generous with their time and talent. Under COVID conditions, we all wanted to do this passion project, which is sort of a lower independent budgeted film. And I think one of the challenges that we definitely had in the cutting room was the balance of those tableau style shots to keep the pace. Because you're right, we had to keep the pace. So we could, myself and Ken found a way where we could move the scenes around, because once you began with the colour and you met the child on the street and the first riot, that was sort of locked in structurally, and the ending was sort of locked in structurally. But everything within the body of the film, there was a possibility of moving, and that helped us create pace. Getting into scenes later, getting out of scenes, when we were shooting, obviously I was able to liaise with Ken, and if there were a few scenes that came in a row in a tableau fashion, I was able to sort of suggest to Ken, do you think we need some close-ups here? He could take a look at my cut and say, oh yeah, let's get some more close-ups. Hence getting, that beautiful Judi Dench close-up when she gives the child the coin, and the little boy takes it. Those two close-ups were like little pickups we did to allow you to be with them at that moment. Otherwise, it was only seen in the wider tableau shot when she was through the window. So it was a real passion project, I think, for all of us, and a real privilege to join Ken in making his story come to life.
I'm curious for you, and for a film like this, because Ken had the luxury, because the set was built. This was built. I love at the end of an airstrip. You guys got your own little Belfast village built. But it let him work in 360 degrees, which I know he loves to do. Especially with scenes like the opening scene with the riot in the Troubles. And you have poor little Buddy, this tiny little figure in the middle of the street, and the camera's going around, and we've got aerials, and the camera's coming down, especially as Ma is running out, trying to grab him. Working with footage like that, with that 360, is that a help or a hindrance to you in setting tone and setting a scene?
You know what? For this particular one, Ken shot us 60 frames per second. But we had the ability where I could put a time ramp on it so that it began, say, 24 frames per second. Then it could move to 60. Then I could bring it back to 48. Then I could move it again. So there was a fluency. If you watch it again, you'll see that actually it doesn't move. We changed the timing of the speed as it goes around the child. And then sound design is my friend. I think sound and music can enrich any film. So once we put the sound design on it, before Ken shot, I was already building up some of the sound design memory motifs. I had asked him what type of things did he remember as a child in Belfast, and he immediately sort of said, the ice cream van, the ragabone man, the ship horns, so specific things that I could begin to build with my assistant editors. I could ask them to sort of download, or I even got my dad, I recorded my dad on my phone in my garden doing the ragabone man that I could use in a temporary way when I was building the assembly during the shoot. Just so at the end of the week when I sent Ken the assembly, it felt rich and nuanced, and those shots then didn't outstay their welcome because there was sound under them. Because you can imagine when they shot it, it is on that airstrip. So we had to rebuild the sound even during the editing before our brilliant sound team joined us. I was already building the sound with my editorial assistants, Carly Brown and Lydia Mannering, during the shoot. We had a few different assistants because of the nature of independent films. Some people could only stay for 2 months at a time because we had 2 months each, because I went on to other jobs. Excuse me. Yeah, so I rejoiced in what Ken shot for that riot, because I love the fact that we had slow motion around him, that we could ramp time, and then we had this explosion of activity where I could really just cut and grab snippets of bits that even may have been shot for the later riot scene, that I could squirrel in there of the army guys in the trucks, and you could just feel the energy and the sort of visceral nature that child must have experienced of this. In the script, Ken described it as a buzzing noise that becomes a riot, and then I tried to do that in the sound design, even in the assembly stage.
Well, you did.
Once you work with sound in a rich way, it helps set the tone and pace of the film as well.
Well, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because the sound is so key here. We always have the omnipresent underlying sounds of that world. They never leave us. And then you layer in Van Morrison's music, be it needle drops, be it scoring, and it adds another whole texture and vibe for the time, for the period. But I find it interesting. I love the fact that you could pull snippets, because we really feel, especially in the riot sequences and the build up to the second situation with the torching. I'm watching some of Harris's shots as the group is coming down the street, and then we have people with torches. It was almost like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where they're going to torch the monster. And it's very metaphoric and so beautiful.
Beautifully done. And also, what I love about what Ken does, he has a lot of sort of John Ford-esque framing sometimes. He even has it in All Is True, which is a film I did with him as well, also in a very short passion project time schedule. But those low-angle shots, and then we were trying to use things like Liberty Valance and High Noon to push the story forward, dealing with, in Liberty Valance, those lines that we chose, why are you getting involved? He tripped me, which was sort of like a metaphor for all that sort of anger that people were getting involved in things for reasons that you could question if you really want to know why the vigilante was so angry. There was and High Noon, obviously, we wanted to sort of plant that seed that the child is watching these High Noon shows. So then later, when his father is in the standoff with Billy Clanton, that you can pull back in the High Noon music like a phantom payoff. And then you see it through the child's eyes. It's his eyes seeing this thing unfold and his father heroically being able to get rid of the gun. And it was little touches of magic realism amongst the authenticity and honesty and simplicity of Ken's shooting style. I think that's what I think we've worked really hard to try and weave that and keep that alive. And once you see it through the eyes of the child, it actually helps you. It invites, it invites a way of cutting it and a way of using the sound design as you go. And say, for example, even like days like these, we had another sequence in the cinema, but we lost it because we had 3 cinema trips and 1 theatre trip. And then we were thinking, well, actually, 2 cinema trips and 1 theatre trip probably felt right, particularly when we introduced the 2 television sequences. So that little sequence was very important because we had some movements, and we were able to move scenes within that body of the film. But Mom has just said, she does not want to go to Australia, and they're sort of talking about, he's saying to her, well, we could go, you could come on holiday, you could phone, and she's batting back everything. And then we wanted to go to a sequence where you could see why Mom didn't want to leave, because so we used days like this, and we sort of collapsed scenes that we hadn't used of the family in the park doing the jumping. And by collapsing scenes and allowing this sort of poetic, lyrical moment to happen, I think the audience can understand why, for Ma, this was a very difficult decision. This was her home. This was her family, her extended family, because there was always a risk. If you didn't allow Ma to have that, or if you didn't allow the audience to see that Belfast could be beautiful, and in days like this, all you need is each other, you might get frustrated with her why she didn't leave earlier, because it might seem very apparent to you, why isn't that lady leaving? So that was also something else that we were very mindful of just setting that subtext and making sure that we could do it in a very light-handed way, so it didn't become too sentimental or it didn't become too pointed, but that the audience could just feel it and understand it on a very unconscious level. Well,
you definitely succeeded, and I love those lighter moments, those lighter montages that you have. The day in the park is just beautiful. Even Buddy and his friends robbing the candy store. It's so childlike. It's so innocent and fun. So it makes you, it's like you can see the beauty, and that's one of the great things with this film, because you and Ken keep it in Buddy's POV. We maintain that childlike. It's like, okay, we have these scary moments, but not everything is scary, and most of it is really good. And then I have to congratulate you guys on not only picking High Noon and Man Who Shot Liberty Valance for the TV movies, but also the Star Trek snippet, the first season of Star Trek snippet, and then we go to the cinema. So we've got that whole idea, that childlike dream of the future, of going where no man has gone, the final frontier, where no man has gone before, and going backwards into when time was just beginning, and then going into the interim of flying cars. So you take us through...
And off the bus as well, we tried to make sure that after that beautiful sequence, of Granny saying Shangri-La,
yes,
then we went to the rear view of the bus, even though Bloody was standing up again. We did a little sound design to get him up again, because it was a different part of the shot we were using, just to allow the bus to go and then just cut into the rear view of the car. So we did try to find these sort of like visual moments that could connect, a sort of a connective tissue. But again, not to be too overt, but that you might feel it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, everything is so well thought out and so well connected, but it all comes down to what you have done with the pace and the intimacy to keep us in Buddy's world, in his eye line, in his periphery. And it is so spectacular, Una. I just fell in love with this immediately, even after the shock factor of the opening riot. It's like, whoa! Yeah, I know Ken knows how to kick off a film, and boy, he didn't disappoint here. I'm really curious for you, because you have worked with Ken now on a few things. What is the magic?
We've done, would you believe we've done 3 films in 2 years?
It's amazing.
All True, Belfast, and Death on the Nile, all within a 2-year period.
It's amazing. But you have... what is the magic that the two of you have? Because editing and directing and writing, that goes so hand in hand. Because it's not that the editor is creating a different film than what the director's vision was. You and Ken are so synergistic, so I'm curious about the magic of the collaboration between the two of you.
You know what? I find Ken just a wonderful person to work with, because he invites collaboration for a start off, which is incredible. And he'll watch anything. If I was doing, even when I was doing something on All Is True, and I had added in this like musical note, and I was trying to show it to him, he always uses the term, which I really like, audition that idea to me. So I did this thing, and no word of a lie, there was this JCB, the huge machinery, knocking down some set outside our window. And what I really appreciate with Ken is 3 times he let me sort of play the same sequence, because I had done a very delicate sound design that I wanted to show him for the Swan, if you've seen All Is True, for Hamlet's death. So what I love about Ken is I think both of us come from a point of view of we love film, and we actually share a desire, I think, to celebrate humanity and to be fearless in looking at our structure. So although he wrote this most magnificent script, he was really open if, for example, I live in Dublin and I commute to work in London. So I really had an empathy and with Pa, actually, as well, because I leave my children at 4 a.m. to take a flight to go to London on a Monday morning. And so when we were cutting the film, for example, the scene where Pa is going and the child's at the window and he's saying 2 weeks and he's gesturing to go sleep, that was much earlier in the film. And as we were working together, I just sort of suggested to Ken, I said, if that came a little bit later, after the kid didn't want to go to London, maybe it would have a poignancy, a more visceral poignancy, as opposed to when it was earlier, it was a bit more expositional, that Dad always has to leave.
Yeah.
And, like, immediately, Ken is so bright, so clever, and I do think it is because it is his life story, and he did write it, that he actually has the graciousness to listen, and if he hears something that rings true for him, he invites it and says, okay, let's try it. So I did that, in his words, auditioned that for me. I showed it to him, and immediately he was like, yeah, this looks really interesting, and we continued. And once we did that structural move, it suggested other structural moves. So we just worked really well together. I mean, we were both working remotely, so we were on the phone every morning at 8 and discussing ideas, and I would send him stuff, and he would send it back, a note to me, and I would do it again and send it again. So it was just a really wonderful collaboration with someone who was so gracious that I think he a lot of people think because it might be his memoir that he might have had a resistance to other people's ideas, but that's not true at all. He actually had the reverse. He had such a strong vision that he didn't lose his vision, even by collaborating with his team, Harris, myself, the production designer, because his vision was so strong, he could actually take on board any ideas that we gave him that rang true for him, and then he could work with them and we could work together. So we've been really fortunate. We're quite sort of kindred spirits, I think, in just wanting to do our best work and tell the best story. And my family my dad is from Northern Ireland, and the script spoke very strongly to me because my dad is very like pop, but they lived through a terrible time of civil injustices. And I think what my father always speaks about is the great friendships between Protestants and Catholics. And for years, I've actually been saying, God, no one has ever made a story about the 1950s, Northern Ireland pre-Troubles. Mm-hmm. And then when I read Ken's script of Belfast, it just sang to me, because I thought, well, he's actually doing that, even though his one is 1969, it is literally pre-Troubles, but he captured the authenticity of what it was like to live there in those streets where life was very simple. It was a great deal with your neighbours taking care of you as much as your parents, that shared community, Protestants and Catholics living together, that was so violently disrupted throughout the 70s and 80s and 90s. So that was important to me. And once Ken wrote that line, at the end of the film, he wrote that later. He wrote that after Christmas, for the ones who stayed, for the ones who left, and for all of those who were lost. Mm-hmm. That was just, it revealed to me as, I know everyone says that Morrison is a poet, but Ken is a poet, because
Ken, yes,
I think he just captured it. He got the right words at the right time, and he did that. And he always wanted John Morrison to be top and tail of the film, and that also afforded me sort of a freedom to then do a lot more work in the sound design before our brilliant sound team. Obviously, they built on what we've done, but we have to do it in the edit, because with the way I work, you have to have the sound to create that rhythm and pace. And I feel very fortunate and very privileged to work with Ken, because I think we both like to be like magpies. We find things in the scenes that we can cheat in, and we can be quite creative in our solutions to any challenges we might face from a storytelling point of view. But we kept just the heart of the film in our minds as the first port of call, and fearlessly getting rid of shots that may have been very beautiful. And had we held them longer, for example, it may have given the film a more sort of tableau feel, sequence of memories. And actually, by being a bit more fearless in cutting, we were able to create the rhythm that I think you enjoyed, of just going from laughter to sadness to laughter, to capturing what it is to be a human.
I've got to ask you, what is the gift that editing gives to you, specifically editing in filmmaking? That's not typically a choice that people make. However, some of our greatest editors have proven to be women. Just ask Marty Scorsese, ask Ken Branagh. What is the gift that this skill, this innate skill you have for editing? What is the gift it gives you?
I think I love storytelling. And my dad was a brilliant storyteller as a child. He'd tell the best bedtime stories, and he'd even, at some dramatic conclusion, he'd have my mom on the light switch so she could turn the light off as he grabbed one of our legs if it was a horror story before bedtime. So I think for me, I just love being able to go through all that footage and cut something together using sound and music and imagery that can reveal a truth that the audience may not be privy to without us telling it in that way. So I'm always attracted to stories of, giving voice to the unheard, or people who have been ignored on a sort of political, social level. I'm always interested in that. But I also love the magic of, the Marvel movies, or the Warner Brothers big movies. So for me, I think I just love it. It's very hard to articulate what it is, because I'm on my own a lot of the time. Sometimes the directors are behind me, but I can just do it in a very thoughtful way, just in a mindful way myself. I'm just watching, and sometimes I could cycle home and an idea comes to me, and I think, oh, maybe that could work for the opening, and I can throw ideas up in the air. So I think I'm very good at that. I think that's my strength, is probably just keeping the story. What's the best way to tell this story, and to keep the audience involved and having empathy for the characters and having an emotional reaction. If I was in any other job, I think, on set, anytime I go to set, there's so many people. I think like most editors, we work really well in sort of quiet space of just looking and working and grafting and finding the truthfulness in the rushes.
Well,
if it speaks to me, it will speak to an audience. That's what I think. So when I create something, I sort of think, well, if that's working for me, I'll show the director, and if it works for them, we're the first audience to the rushes. We're the first people to see what the director has created on set, and then if it works for us, I think there's a good chance it'll work for a greater audience.
Well, it definitely worked for me, Una. Definitely.
Well, thank you, Debbie. If you ever come to London or Dublin, I'm taking you out for dinner. Thank you so much.
And I'll hold you to it, Una. Thank you so much. This has been a pure joy about a film that I love so, so, so much. And I hope I get to talk to you again in the future.
I hope so. Thank you so much, Debbie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.